Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're thrilled to have with us Matthieu Mehuys, an award-winning author and landscape architect on a mission to show us how our own backyards can be a force for caring for the planet. Welcome, Matthieu. How are you today?
Hey, Aram, I'm so excited to be on your show. Very
Yeah,
cool to
and
be here.
I saw this on your LinkedIn. I didn't actually ask you before we got started. You're in Belgium, is that correct?
Let's say my company at the moment is still in Belgium, but my
Okay.
home base is now in the Azores, which is
Okay. Wow.
an archipelago of 9 islands in the middle of the Atlantic, and I'm on the main island called São Miguel, and it's actually
Okay.
part of Portugal. Yeah,
Very nice. Okay.
so I'm
So,
halfway
but you
between the US and you. And I have a
okay?
company, like officially my company is still in Belgium, but we're opening or we have an office here now as well. Yeah.
Very good. Oh, wow. Oh, that's fascinating. Okay. Well, the reason I asked that is because I, for as far back as I can remember, have always preferred mayonnaise as my condiment of choice for French fried potatoes.
Oh
And a
yes,
few years ago, I
no
heard that in
doubt.
Belgium, that was kind of the preferred condiment for dipping your French fries.
Oh,
So I
it
have never
is.
verified this. Is that the case?
It's true. It's our national heritage. Like, and I'm
There we
gonna
go.
tell you, my mom makes like the best. This is like mom food, right? But my mom makes the best homemade mayonnaise. It's
Okay.
insane. Like, and it's actually
Ah,
extremely healthy because what you
that's
have
awesome.
like on our farm, we produce our own eggs. So it's
Okay. Yeah.
grass-fed eggs that
Sure.
run freely. It's some oils that are also fine. So it's actually healthy.
That's awesome. We would get along well then because I people have always looked at me funny when I asked for a side of mayonnaise to eat my French fries, and I've
That's
just
the
never
best.
been one for ketchup. So
You
good.
Yeah, you
Okay,
definitely have to come to Belgium. You'll love
I,
it. You
I
get it everywhere.
that sounds like a plan. That sounds great.
It's not
All
even a
right.
myth.
I'm glad to hear that because I didn't know until somebody just said it kind of offhandedly, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's true. So I'm glad to hear directly that it is indeed the case. Matthieu, real quickly, let's run through some quick openers here. Tell me what you think the best item you have purchased in 2025 has been.
Oh, that's that's a good question, but a terrible one to ask me because I don't buy much stuff. The
Okay.
best item, like physical item or even a software.
Software is fine. Yep. You
Let
purchased
me
it in some
think.
way.
Oh man, and I'm gonna tell you, I love food, so I bought like I'm on the Azores and I have a friend who makes chocolate from scratch,
Okay.
and he sells these. Like you can buy it in small quantities, but I just bought like 2 kilos of his 100% chocolate.
Okay.
There's no other ingredient in it,
Wow.
and I love it because I make like I have that coffee addiction that maybe some people can relate to. So I
Sure.
have to like get off coffee every now and
Mm-hmm.
then, and I'm
Yep.
trying to stay off it. So a hot chocolate, like with some fresh milk,
That's
is
great.
is really really good for the morning, and it actually gives you some boost in the morning as well, and it's
Yep.
way healthier than coffee.
That's awesome. Yeah, that sounds pretty solid for sure. That's the real deal. What do you think you would say your least favorite sandwich would be?
My least fa- oh yeah, it's at the time when I didn't like um, cilantro. I was like in the
Oh,
airport of London and I had to have something to eat, and I bought a sandwich and it had cilantro, and
okay.
I was almost like puking because I had never eaten
No.
it. I mean, now I would like it, but I thought like
Sure.
at that time I couldn't stand it. And apparently
Wow.
for
Okay.
some people it tastes really like soap, and for others it
Yes.
doesn't. So
Yep.
at that time it was like very soapy. Now I actually love it in a lot of
Interesting.
dishes.
So your taste has actually changed with that. I don't know if
Yeah,
I've ever heard of somebody who like developed a change in
I
appreciation
don't
there.
know.
So, huh. Very cool. Okay. Well, yeah, if it tastes like soap, that would be a pretty miserable sandwich. Um,
Yeah,
do you have? Is there a particular song that you have completely memorized? Like you could
a,
sing it
co-
right
a
now if you had to.
particular song.
Yep. 100% from memory.
No, no.
Okay.
I kind of have waves of songs that come and go and that I like. I'm
Yeah.
now like in 70s, 80s rock.
There we
Like
go.
when I grew up, my dad, every Sunday we had the American 60s, 70s, 80s
Uh
rock
huh.
at the
Sure.
at the breakfast on Sunday. So I'm kind of getting back to that. I
That's
love it.
great.
These good American power songs. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, some good rock ballads there. Yeah, that's some
yeah,
classic stuff. That's awesome. All right. Well, Matthew, getting started here, I would like to maybe if you could lead off with a little bit of background. You started off in a family farm there in Belgium, right?
yeah,
Can you
exactly.
tell me? Yeah, give me a little bit of a trajectory from those early days to what you were doing on the lands and how that's kind of shaped your path to where you're at today at this point.
Yeah, sure, Aaron. So for me, like you said, I grew up on a family farm. By the age of 3 years old, I was extremely fascinated about plants, how they grow and how they evolve. Like the just the mere idea that you have a tiny seed and you put it on the soil and it grows into something, like that was
Yeah.
like I was starstruck just by that idea as a 3 or 4 or 5 year old. And then around the age of 6 or 5, we had a teacher in school that we had like she was teaching us a lot about plants. So in our classroom, it was full of plants. We were learning how to multiply plants. We had a little vegetable garden, and I
Mm.
loved it. Like I was hooked, so to speak. And then I came home and I told my parents like, "Hey, I want to start my own vegetable garden." And at that time on our farm, it was mostly cash crops and cattle, so there wasn't much vegetable growing going on. But I said I want to do that, and after like some like my parents were very busy. They both have their different businesses, and they said no, we don't have time for that. Like leave us alone. But I kind of persisted and kept asking. And at some point they said like, oh, there's like that corner in the backyard. Go and fool around there. It's fine. Here's some
Nice.
seeds. And for some reason, I started out with radishes. And when you want to start out your gardening or your vegetable gardening journey, start with radishes because it's the most beautiful thing. You put some seeds in the soil, a couple weeks later you have something that you can actually eat. So that's what I
Okay.
did as a at a very young age. And then I thought like, wow, this gardening is so easy, right? And by the way, it was like one of the most enriching experiences at such a young age. And I still think today it's so nice to grow your own food and grow your own plants. Like just that feeling of like creation or being part of creation
Yeah.
is so nice. And also then I just love to create spaces. I was already like kind of designing my little garden and finding some old stones on the farm and arranging them in a certain way. And but so then I thought like this gardening, it's so easy. So I got some more seeds and I got the lettuce, the tomatoes, I got carrots, everything. And I just started spreading out seeds everywhere, kind of looking at the packages. I couldn't really understand much. And I thought like, oh, it's so easy. So Mother Nature is going to take care of me, providing me with everything that I need and that I want to grow. And I think you already see what's came next. Like at that time, I also started an egg business. I got
Okay.
like 20 chicken from my dad, and I every day after school I would harvest the eggs. I would take care of the chicken, and I was selling them to friends of my parents. And honestly, by the time I was 12, I had made like $2,000.
Wow. Okay.
And I then invested that in the stock market, but that's another
That's
story.
great.
But so I was doing all kinds of other things on the farm, and I just came back to my garden a couple weeks later, thinking like, oh, it's going to be full of these lush vegetables, and I'm going to harvest all those things. But that wasn't the truth because, or that didn't happen. I came back and it was completely overgrown by weeds.
Yeah.
And then a lot of questions arose for me, and I was devastated. I was like, what did I do wrong? Why didn't Mother Nature help me? Why didn't it provide me? And I'm telling you this story because only later in life I really started to realize why it is. It's because we don't really understand how nature works. And so I kind of continued my life. I studied economics and modern languages as like a undergraduate, and then I went to university, I think you would call it, in the US. And I went back to my roots and I studied garden design because I really wanted to know the skills and I was really curious about plants. I finished doing that, and then I was like, I don't feel like complete. So I did another master degree in engineering for landscape architecture and in big scale projects. And I did that, and then I did what was expected of me, and probably a lot of the listeners are doing as well, or thinking that they should do that. I got into a 9 to 5 job, and nothing wrong with 9 to 5 jobs, but like I did it because I thought it was like what I should be doing.
Sure.
And I did it for 2.5 years, and like a year in the job or even less, I became completely depressed.
Hmm.
Even though I really learned a lot and I also enjoyed parts of it, but I was like on my desk all the time, having to deal with with bureaucracy. I was working in Germany at the time, like one of the top companies in landscape design, because it's like a hotspot there for public space design in Germany or in Europe. So it was like a good experience, and I learned a lot, especially like the German way of doing engineering and being super
Sure.
structured and rigid in planning. So that was good. But then I was sick and tired of it, so I quit my job and I packed a backpack, and I said, like, we're kind of the same generation, but you all like grew up with Al Gore, the inconvenient truth, like
Yeah.
climate change, all that things, and I wanted to have an impact. Like I couldn't look to the world and see how everything is going to waste. I didn't want to live that life. So, but I was also not in power of doing something about it. So I said, I'm going to, or not much about it. So I'm going to hit the road and go to places where people are actually doing amazing things for the planet in terms of regenerative farms. I went to a lot of eco resorts. I volunteered. I did more courses on permaculture. Like I kept studying, and I did that for 1.5 years. And then something else happened, is that Mother Nature had kind of another plan for me, or it decided to change my course, because I was really enjoying this lifestyle. I had like a remote job. I was a digital nomad, and I
Yeah.
worked like 8 hours a week. For the
Sure.
rest, I was volunteering, surfing. Like I loved all those things. And then at some point, I decided to go to the Amazon rainforest, and I can tell you this, like this is the one of the biggest impacts on my life, because if you have the opportunity to go there, it's like it's so crazy. It's so pristine. I went with an indigenous to travel. Like he used to work for National Geographic, and he guided me through the rainforest for like 3 days on a
Wow.
boat, and we were like in the depth of the rainforest in Ecuador, and I really enjoyed it. I was like, "This Jesus, this planet is so precious. We have to do everything possible to protect that." Those like thoughts that were going through my head, but I still was like kind of clueless of how I should do that or what I could do about it. I was doing some posts on Instagram about it, like to create awareness. But then Mother Nature had a different plan for me, and after that trip, I became really sick. I got a fever, a dengue fever. It's kind of like
Ooh.
malaria, but you
Okay.
can get really sick of it. So I was sick for several weeks. I lost a lot of weight, and honestly, from that moment on, my life went really south. Like
Wow.
my girlfriend dumped me. I didn't have any more money because I was traveling all the time. I had to move back into
Gosh.
my parents' house in Belgium. Like all these things happened, and then I don't know if you ever experienced it, but I was kind of like at the rock bottom, and then you start to ask yourself some deeper questions, like why am I here? What am I
Yeah.
doing here? And then it struck me like I'm here to make sure that we can protect the future of our planet and help Mother Nature to thrive, because it can do it. We're just being too destructive about it. So and then I was like, okay, what can I do about it? Okay, we definitely should work on politics, but politics since the 60s, 50s, nothing has, or very little has changed in that realm. And I'm not saying we shouldn't focus on politics. It's definitely has its space, but usually politics only follow after a certain amount of people take action, and it
Right.
becomes almost mainstream, and then they say, oh yeah, we should do all of the things
Yeah.
like that. So I also thought about charities. They're doing great work, but honestly, they're very dependent of funding. So if someone is a major funder and they decide like we don't have money or we don't believe in your cause anymore, it's game over. So it's not very
Sure.
sustainable. So and then I figured like it's it's entrepreneurship. It's starting a business. That's the thing that has always changed the world. It's the people like you and me that build a business. We fail, we try again, we change things, we pursue a bigger vision, and we put that in the world. And that's what I did almost 5 years ago. I started my company, Paulonia Landscape Architects, because that was the skill that I had. And I started to design gardens for people that were a little bit different. I really had all this knowledge that I gathered about how to work with nature. And I also had clients that said, yeah, but I want a beautiful garden. So I brought that all together, and we are now creating, or now we have clients in 4 continents across the globe, and we help people to get a beautiful garden that is also easy to maintain, and that doesn't require all the chemicals and all the things that we know are bad for the environment. So your garden becomes like a hotspot for biodiversity, and it helps actually save the planet. And so now we are expanding that. It was actually funny. I had a client that we finished a complete redesign of their estate, or at least a big portion of it. And she said, like, I love the work that you've done for us, but you know what? I'm sick and tired of having a landscape architect, because I want to feel what it's like to do it with my own hands, to come up with the ideas. And I
Sure.
said, wow, and thank you for saying that. And I told her, you know what? And I had that idea already in my mind before that. But I said, you know what? I'm going to teach you everything that I know in a 9-week program. And I'm
Okay.
going to create a masterclass, and you'll be my first client. She signed up. Like, it was at a very reasonable price then,
Wow.
or like a early bird discount. And she said yes. And so I found my mother and some other friends, and a few other people that paid for the course. And so I run my first course, and that today is helping people all over the world to start their own garden and do it, like, get the skills to design it, to plant it, to maintain it. And that's really fun. I just came off a call with my weekly group call of my clients, and so that's what we're doing. And then on top of that, more recently, we are now also working with developers. So because I see that a lot of the mistakes in construction are being made, yeah, already in the planning phase, and a lot of things can be avoided by working more with nature rather than against it. And it actually is also more, it's cheaper to build more regeneratively or more sustainably. So
Yeah.
that's where we're coming in. And somewhere in those lines as well, I wrote a book called The 12 Universal Laws of Nature, where I outline these ideas, because that's what struck me as a 5-year-old. I was like, why is nature not working with me? And then later in life, I started to understand it's because we're doing things against nature. And nature has certain laws by which it works. So if you don't understand the laws of nature or how nature works, then you're constantly going to be battling against it. And it's very unsustainable, it's very costly, maintenance costs are extremely high. But if you start to understand how nature works, and you work with those laws, and you apply that into your farm, into your garden, into your whatever outdoor space or even an indoor space that you have, then it's become so much easier to create the garden of your dreams, the Garden of Eden, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. So this is fascinating. I'm curious because you used the word regenerative a couple times. Tell me if there is a distinguishing factor between that and maybe just something more broad, like sustainable or green. Like I think we
Yeah.
all loosely know what those terms mean, but when you say regenerative, are you applying a different definition there
Yes,
to
that's a
that?
really good question, Aaron, because there's a lot of confusion around it. And I have to say, regenerative is kind of becoming a very hot word these days, which is good as long as people don't use it for greenwashing, because that it's now everything can become regenerative. But for me,
Sure.
the core distinction, if you look at also the etymology of the word, that's mostly how you can figure out. If you look at sustainability, what it means is to sustain, is to
Right.
actually keep doing the same thing. And it's
Yep.
kind of maybe like Einstein's quote. He said it: "Insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result." And that's what a lot of the paradigm of sustainability is like. Okay, we can keep doing the same thing, but let's
Sure.
reduce emissions by 5%. Let's keep doing the same, but let's make it a little less harmful. And if
Yeah.
you think about it, it's kind of a stupid idea to keep doing something in a certain way, but do it a little bit less harmful.
Sure.
Is it so much better if you, like, I don't know, spray your whole field, and you with a lot of chemicals that are bad for cancer, for health, for like a lot of things, and you say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, we're gonna make it better by just reducing it by 5%. Like, is that
Right.
gonna make the world of difference? No, it's kind of the same, right?
Yeah.
So that's where it becomes really interesting, and we look at regenerative or regeneration is to restore, to regenerate, and it's actually nature always does that on its own. Like if you cut down a rainforest or a forest, it will also always naturally regenerate itself. That's because the laws of nature work in a certain way. You
Yep.
remember that. But in regenerative design, in regenerative farming, in regenerative principles, we actually speed up the process of nature itself. So we work with nature. And so when you do that, you can now pretty much abolish a lot of the old systems, remove that, and use something that works with nature. So it's far more efficient. It can be more cost effective, and yeah, the results are amazing. Like if we look at I think regenerative farming was the first industry that started adopting it. I would say 10, 20, 30 years ago. Probably some people were doing it before it was a word. Very sure about that, but it's kind of in regenerative farming. You now see that they can produce without much chemicals. They have higher yields. They're more successful. The soil is richer. They're sequestering carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, so they're actually
Yeah.
reversing climate change. So these are all the things that you work with nature rather than against it.
Yeah, so because that's like kind of my initial thought as someone who knows very little about this space is there a if you're a landscape architect, you're a lot of your primary mission is for a customer facing project is to make things look beautiful, right? You have an
Yeah,
aesthetic that is
exactly.
important. It does You don't want it to be dull
Yeah.
or boring or anything like that. So yeah, that was my initial query is that at tension with something that's functionally regenerative, or can they work hand in hand? It sounds like you're, at least from the farming perspective, yeah, there's a net positive to doing it in a regenerative way. So how does that look if you move over to landscape architecting? Is that similar principles there as well that would apply?
Yes, yes. Very interesting question, and in a way it is. So what we could call regenerative gardens or regenerative garden designs is that where you have to kind of look at the let's call it the conventional way of gardening, where
Yeah.
you put plants in the ground, you try to keep plants alive by using chemicals. You add a lot of fertilizer. Your plants are being attacked by bugs, and then you use insecticides. You have to like constantly keep your plants alive, and you're spraying
Right.
them, and it's kind of, yeah, it's very unsustainable, and it's common practice in all of the gardening industry. And in fact, when I started to dig into more of the garden industry, there's so much things that are so wrong in terms of how they work and why they work in such way. Like the whole gardening industry, they don't. If you're a homeowner, they don't want you to be a regenerative or successful or naturalistic gardener, because then you don't have to buy all the crap that they sell at the garden centers
Sure.
and all the chemicals and all the
Sure.
things that make most profit. Like it's
Yeah.
kind of you're giving back the sovereignty. It's the same with farming and farmers, but you're giving back the
Huh.
sovereignty to the gardener.
Okay.
Like because you can create all, you can work with compost, you can work with other things, and so you don't need all the crazy tools that they keep selling. and
Yeah.
and so the gardening, the garden centers, especially the big ones, they want you to keep coming back. So they sell you things. They sell plants that are often chemically like boosted. They have a lot of chemicals in them, and then they look pretty, and then you buy them, but they die because they're so like um, almost as if they put a lot of hormones in them, but they're
Hmm.
boosting them that much chemically
Hmm.
that when you then plant them in your garden, and they look pretty because they're like
Yeah.
in a greenhouse and in a
Yeah.
protected environment, they've pushed them to look pretty, but then when you put them in their garden, they suffer. I'm not saying that there's like an evil force behind it. It's just kind of
Sure.
like how things have evolved, but there's a different way when you do it the right way, and it actually all starts with the soil. Like most people look, and when they garden, they look, oh, there's a problem. They look above ground, and it's kind of
Okay.
logical. But
Yeah.
that's one of the laws in my book, is the law of duality. It's like things that happen above ground, there's a connection to what's happening underground.
Okay.
Like even if you look at a tree, the size of the tree above ground is almost the same underground. So why are we not thinking about what's happening underground? And
Yeah.
in conventional systems, we use a lot of chemicals, and those chemicals kill the microorganisms, and the microorganisms are like the lifeline of the soil, even for
Yeah.
ourselves in our personal
Right.
health. Our gut system works on microorganisms. So if you eat a lot of chemically sprayed food and processed food, you're destroying your own microbiome,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't properly digest your food, and then you get cancer and all the modern diseases that are out there.
Yeah.
And it's the same with plants.
It's almost as though the approach from a typical gardening perspective is to protect like the individual plant. Like you put it in there, and then everything's about protecting, like you said, what's above the soil. It's like we have to
Yeah,
ward off the bugs, we have to ward off, any sort of weather change. It's all about like keeping this thing alive, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And not looking at, so you were mentioning soil. So I'm curious, like if you're advising somebody who maybe has like a very small urban
Mm-hmm.
garden, so like more
Mm-hmm.
limited options and resources, but they
Yeah.
want to excel here. What do you like? What does that look like? Is the soil kind of the primo facto? Like this is where you got to start, kind of work from there. How are you helping somebody who wants to take this on with maybe not acres available to develop something there?
No, yeah. So the way it works is that you have to, and this is kind of the curriculum of my online course. That's how it's built. Is that the first thing you have to do is you have to understand how nature works. So you kind of have to study, and I also outlined that in my book. But you kind of have to start to understand how nature works, because if you have a piece of bare soil, something will happen over the next 200 years by which it becomes a forest. So
Okay.
everything is always like nature wants to drive to the highest succession, which is a natural
Hmm.
forest in many, if not most places in the world. But so what is happening in between, and how does that happen, and why does that happen, and what's happening with the soil as those things evolve? Because once you
Hmm.
understand that, you'll look differently when you want to create something in your garden. You're like, oh, if I want a shrub, I know that this needs to happen to the soil so that that plant will thrive in those conditions. So you're creating the ideal conditions for the plants that you want to grow. So starting with understanding nature is key. Then the second thing that I teach people is you have to analyze your area. You have to know your soil type. You have to know the conditions, your weather, the rainfall. Like I have a whole system, and actually it's quite interesting. I use AI to or I have an AI tool that helps you through the course. So, but it's really important to understand what you have, what's the condition of your current state, so to speak, the analysis. And
Okay.
then once you do the analysis, you have to make a plan. Yeah, even if it's a small space. Like I design gardens also in cities, and I have to say, when it's an urban garden, it's often more work because I'm really want to be like super conscious or super intentional about each and every plant. So I make a
Sure.
plan, and you have to make a plan because otherwise you're gonna fail. Like I think one of your, I don't know who said it, one of your presidents, former presidents, said it. It's like if you're failing to plan, you're planning to fail.
Yeah.
So do you know who said it? I think it was
It sounds like a Calvin Coolidge quote, but I could be wrong on
uh,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I'm not sure either. But so planning is really important, and
Yeah.
doing that based on how nature is important. And then once you have the plan, you make you select your plans, and then you execute it, and you do other soil enhancement technologies, you could say. But it's just like how nature works. So like making compost or buying high quality compost from regenerative farmers if you can't produce it yourself, because it's quite a complicated thing. And so it's sometimes better to go to regenerative farmers and buy it from them. You'll support their business as well. And
Sure.
that compost is kind of like a kickstarter for your soil. It's kind of like
Yeah.
for our personal health, we buy, sometimes you've heard of, or people are now using probiotics, right?
Yep.
Compost is like the probiotics of the
Yep.
soil. And in all honesty, it's actually almost the same thing. It's
Right.
even proven that when you garden in a healthy soil, you touch the soil, your skin absorbs the microorganisms that are in the soil, and it enhances your
Yeah.
personal health. So it's really like fix the soil, and then everything becomes so much easier. Because the thing is that when your soil is healthy, and now we're getting. Do you want me to explain like the even the scientific details of why it's so
Yep.
important?
That'd be great. Go for it.
So what happens under the soil is that the microorganisms, they live in symbiosis with the plants. So
Okay.
microorganisms have the ability to take minerals. They usually eat it or change it somewhat, and now it becomes um, bioavailable for the roots of the plants to absorb the minerals that it needs. And
Okay.
so, why are those microorganisms doing that? You might wonder. It's because plants give them something in exchange. So it's kind of like a massive stock market where there's
Okay.
constant trading going on. That's why I believe capitalism is maybe is the best solution for the planet, because nature is doing it. We just have to guide it maybe and not be destructive. But
Sure.
I still believe that. And there's someone, there's a book called Naturalistic Capitalism or something.
Okay.
I recommend reading that, and it explains that as well. So, but there's that exchange of minerals and the plants, because plants do photosynthesis. You might remember that from the
Yep.
biology class. And as they do photosynthesis, they produce sugar under the form of glucose. And as it turns out, the microorganisms, they need that sugar to survive. So they're like, and the plants are. They found in the last 2 or 3 years, they found out that plants are now communicating with the microorganisms, telling them that, like, hey, it's springtime. I need a lot of nitrogen, because in
Huh.
springtime plants need more nitrogen.
Yeah.
And then the microorganisms go and find some stuff in the soil and change and do some work, and then here's the nitrogen, and in exchange they get sugar. So it's like a beautiful
Huh.
system, and this is by default, that's how nature works. But
Yeah.
it's only since we started to use chemicals that when you use the chemicals, and you might use a chemical to kill a bug because the bug is killing your plant, but then the chemicals go into the soil and they disturb that whole system, which is
Right.
kind of fragile. So
Yep.
when that system is not working well, then your plants become unhealthy and they get attacked by insects, because in nature they're finding this out now in the things that everything that we see is vibration, like quantum physics, right?
Yeah.
We've heard about that, and
Yep.
everything vibrates at a certain frequency, and when plants are unhealthy, the vibration drops, and that sends out signals to insect like, oh, that plant is sick or it's going to die, let's attack it because we
Yeah.
want to recycle the nutrients.
Yeah.
So even if you use chemicals to kill the bugs, you're actively making your plants weaker, and
Sure.
next year you'll have the problem will even be worse. So it's kind
Yeah.
of, the conventional system is a quick fix and a short-term solution, making
Yeah.
the problem worse over time. Whereas in regenerative systems, we get to the root cause of the problem, and we enhance the soil, and then your plants become healthy, and they have a good immune system. They can protect themselves from all the insects.
I want to go back to something you said early on when we started off. You said that you kind of had this epiphany where you realized the best way to affect this change on a broad level was probably not to do it, strictly in volunteerism or a charity because you're always bound by something else, but actually through entrepreneurship because you could have a little bit more control over how wide that impact was going to be, right? So
Yes.
that's interesting for me to hear because I think that we often look at, and I'm involved on nonprofits, and like I believe there's good in those, but I think that sometimes they can receive the highest degree of, I guess you could say, elevation in terms of the good that they're able to do. But like you said, they're kind of limited to who's funding them, and that string can get pulled kind of quickly, right? So I'm
Yeah.
curious, what was a key factor that kind of allowed you to scale this passion into what you now have is like a thriving international practice.
Yeah.
So like going from, yeah, okay, this is good, I want to make a business, and now it's really something. How did that come about, and what were some of the success factors in that journey?
I think it started when I started to realize all the things that I told you, and how effective nature is at solving its own problems, and that, like, we can do so much better than the conventional system. It's more affordable. You get better results. The values of your, like, when you have a beautiful regenerative garden, you don't have to work in it as much. The value of your property rises drastically. So
Yeah.
there's all these, like, benefits that I only discovered as I went and started doing it from my passion. And now it's kind of like I'm like on a mission to really make this a no-brainer for anyone who has a home, a farm, anything outdoors, to, like, guys, you shouldn't even be thinking about the old systems, because
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, because the other ways are so obvious. And I'm not saying that it's like super easy, and you still have to study it, and you need the right knowledge, and you have to partner with the right people, but kind of supporting people in giving them back those natural understandings of how nature works, and how it can help them, is the key driver of my business. And I was, at some point in my life, I was also like, with climate change, we have to we need funding, and we need like taxes and subsidies to get this going, and there should be like that approach. And it's not very effective because that messes with the market, those things. And a free market is the best choice, especially now when we can prove that working with nature is so much better, more
Hmm.
cost effective. You get better results. So we don't need like often the climate change paradigm is stuck in like in victimhood. It's like,
Mm.
oh, we have to help the
Yeah,
planet. The planet doesn't need our help. Like it's gonna survive with or without us.
sure.
But it's gonna get rid of us if we keep doing the harmful way, and that's what's
Yeah,
happening. So we better like shift so that we can sustain to live on this planet, and that's what's really driving me. Yeah,
yeah, that's awesome. So, for our listeners who at this point are feeling inspired, send them off with a like maybe the single most important thing they can do even this weekend if they're going to start aligning their own patch of land, with some of the principles that you mentioned. I found your book, 12 Universal Laws of Nature, so I'm actually looking forward to reading that myself. But
nice.
beyond that, is there something like right now they can, boom and apply, start off with?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing, and that's one of the things I teach as well, is to become a really good observer, is to maybe go to a farm, maybe go to a botanical garden and talk to people or observe like, oh, how does this planting work? Oh, there's some grasses and there's some flowers here, like, or even go into nature. That's your best teacher. Nature, if you go to national parks and you start to observe like how do the trees interact with all the other plants,
Hmm.
then you'll start seeing things differently. So I
Yeah.
think observation is a key thing, and then probably questioning the status quo, like questioning whatever you like. If it's like springtime and you're like, oh, I'm gonna put nitrogen in my grass, that's kind of like the common thing. Start questioning: is there maybe
Yeah.
like a natural solution? Because if I go in nature, nobody's putting nitrogen on the grass in nature, and it looks
Hmm.
fine there. So like starting to think like every step
Yeah.
that you would do in your garden, question like, could there be a simpler, easier nature-based solution?
Yeah.
And there is, because nature works in that way. We
Yeah.
just have to learn how to leverage it and use it to the to get the results we want. Yeah,
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, I I still remember growing up. We had a compost bucket underneath the kitchen sink where we
yeah,
would put all of our all of our
yes,
stuff, and it was kind of. I mean, we had a great garden, and mom grew berries and veggies and all sorts of good stuff. But like that
there
was
you
like
go.
the prime product, and it was every other day or so we'd have to cart that bucket out to the back, and it was kind of rough because like by the time it'd been sitting there for a minute, it was pretty ripe, but
Yeah,
it had some great effects on the back end, and that wasn't anything more than just putting all the eggshells and all the fruit peels and all the stuff that you would throw in the trash, just
yeah,
redirecting it so you could reuse it, and it wasn't
hmm,
an extra purchase you had to make or another product that you had to keep stocked. It was just,
no,
oh, hey, we're done with this now in this state. We'll move it over here and allow it to, regenerate good nutrients and develop the soil. So yeah, that's
yeah, I agree. There's many ways in which we already were doing things regeneratively. It's just like picking the things that work.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so it's great that you experienced that.
Yeah. Matt, this has been great. I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much for your time and sharing with us. And I hope if you are ever over here, stateside in Kentucky, you will look us up and we can treat. I don't know if you like bourbon, but that's kind of our number one product here in Kentucky. I'd be happy to run you to some bourbon
Nice,
tours. And
nice.
I actually have some good friends who own some distilleries that have done some really cool regenerative processes
Oh, cool.
with their distillery and kind of how they're utilizing that. So yeah, might be some fun little cool collaborative work on that front. But yeah, thank you so
Yes.
much for joining us, and look forward to catching you up down the road. And hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you very much, Aram, for having me. You
Yeah,
asked some really good questions. Thank you for that.
no problem. Thanks so much. Cheers, Matthew.